Hello everyone, my name is Joanne Smith-Tavener. I'm a faculty instructor for AAAI-ISMA, and I'm here today to talk about group fitness instructors and what their responsibilities are, and give some tips as far as teaching that first group fitness class. And from my experience, I taught for 25 years or so. The group exercise class that I taught was more choreographed, if you will. So I had to learn my material, but it was pre-given to me, just like a lot of the Les Mills programs. With that being said, though, what makes that instructor, what prepares you for that class is practice, practice, practice. And I can't say that enough. Personally, I would literally practice my routines in front of the mirror with my cueing over and over and over again till it became second nature. Because when I'm in the class, I'm there to teach. I'm not there to practice. I should have already practiced everything that I plan to do. So whatever my, whatever I wanted to teach, making sure that I'm covering all of that, and including in that progressions and regressions for each and every exercise that I was presenting. So number one tip is practice, 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 because when you're on stage, and people are looking at you, and they're looking at you for guidance. So again, the material should be that you are teaching, not looking at notes, oh, okay, what am I supposed to do next? That should be committed to memory. I always say, make sure you have a plan A, B, and C, because in my experience, something will go wrong. And inevitably it will. And it'll be at the most inopportune time. It could be something as simple as, oh, by the way, Joanne, you're not teaching in that room today, you're teaching in this room. And this room may be filled with tables, chairs that you have to move about and, make the space, make sure you know where your electric is, where can I plug in my equipment, have that backup plan, be ready, have different music for whoever your audience is. And what I mean by that is you may have planned, okay, this is the type of audience that I plan to be here today, and it may be a different audience. So choosing music for the genre of the students in that class, I always like to choose a variety of music. Music, hip-hop music, country western music, popular music that you hear on the radio, and of course making sure that that music, as far as the beats per minute, match what I'm teaching. So also with that being said, is you have to develop great communication skills. You have to be able to make sure that you are able to identify what weaknesses that you may see out there, or people may not be following the proper form. And form and technique far outweigh, the amount of weight that someone can lift. So you want to make sure that you start by teaching, and a good instructor rarely stands in one place. And what I mean by that is if I'm teaching something, and if I'm doing something like a squat or, a deadlift, how can someone in the back see me if, say I'm like, there's 6, 7, 10 rows deep, that you can't see me. So therefore, I will turn my body so that people over here can see me, people over here can see me. And you should not stay in that spot. I know some people say, well, I can't leave the stage because this is a requirement of how I'm supposed to teach. But be around as much as possible. And with that movement around, you also want to make sure that you're approachable as the instructor. Before I even start my class, I make sure I arrive early. Have to be there early. There's nothing more frustrating than, people standing around looking at their watches or their phones like, where's the instructor, who's teaching, what's going on? So you want to make sure you're there early. And when you arrive early to your class, I always used to like to set the tone, right? I'm all prepared, everything's ready to go, my playlist, everything. I have my music playing right before the class starts. So they're coming into the room like, oh, okay, this is where the party is. Yes, this is where the party is. And I think that's important because it sets the tone. What's going on here? Okay, this is a group exercise class and we're about to have fun. Most people will tell me that, they come to class because they want to forget their problems. So kind of going off on tangent, as a group fitness instructor, leave your personal stuff home. People come there to forget what's going on. This is maybe their 1 hour, twice a week of their me time. And so they don't want to hear about your husband, your kids, your dogs, or whatever. They want to enjoy their time doing their workout. This is their stress reliever. So I have to really kind of focus in on that. And sometimes, I'll give a personal story. I was going to teach a group exercise certification class in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. And I drove up to my mom's house to stay there because it was an hour from that house. And it was a cold winter day. It was dark. And of course, my backup camera chose not to work because there was snow and ice on the ground. And as I backed up, I forgot that my sister's car was behind me and banged right into it. Okay, this is wonderful. There I am going to go teach a class. Ripped up her car, ripped up my car, going to Lansdale, getting ready to teach that certification. And it was just, I wiped it off. That waited for me for afterwards and when I got home. Because my priority was focusing on educating and teaching people how to perform or teach a safe, effective, and fun group exercise class. So that is just one example. Was that a horrible thing for me to go through? Sure, it was a mistake, but I was rushed and my mind wasn't thinking on backing out. So getting back to the topic as far as group fitness class and what some responsibilities are. Again, arriving early, answering questions. There may be people who are brand new to the class today and they just came in. And of course they figured, okay, well, I'm coming to this class, I don't know anybody. One tip I like to give is that if I realize like someone's coming to the class and they'll say their name is, Julie. Oh, hi Julie, my name is Joanne, I'm the instructor for today. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to come up and talk to me after class. And if there's any issues or any difficulty you may have with any of the exercise routines, please let me know. And then what I would do is I'll take Julie and maybe I'll introduce Julie to one of my veteran class students who is there all the time, who could probably teach the class for goodness sake. And I'll say, hi Julie, I want to introduce you to Ann. And Ann's been coming for a long, long time. So now what I've established as a group fitness instructor is that I've welcomed Julie to my class. I also introduced her to one of my veteran students. So now she feels that sense of community and socialness. So she can go home and say, I did my first class today. The hardest part was walking through the door. Second part was, okay, I know I'm going to something that with like-minded people, we have an interest in exercise. And I met someone too. So the likelihood that Julie would come back to class is pretty high. And my goal as a group fitness instructor is to make sure that she's successful in that class. And I want to make sure that, okay, she may not get all the moves down, and that's okay. And that, of course, that's something I would approach her afterwards. Julie, how was that first class? Okay, it was pretty good. I was a little frustrated, got a little lost here and there. That's okay, that's normal, and that will happen. But with practice, you'll get better. So I'm instilling in her that, you want to continue doing this, and by doing it more, you're going to become better at it. And the same goes for us as group fitness instructors. The more you practice, the better you become. The more you practice your communication skills, the better you are at communicating. Other things I like to say is, have a checklist of movements. Ensure you're moving the body in all various planes as far as you're the group fitness instructor. You don't want just statically, flexion extension. We talk about this in our fitness certifications. But moving around the room, turning your body, making sure that you're not only moving, side to side, you're moving forward and back, rotational type movements, because we want to move our bodies in all these different, various angles and positions so that we don't create any type of injuries for our students and for ourselves. Some other things I would say is make sure you're dressed appropriately. I know that sounds kind of, crazy, but, if you're going to interview for a gym position and, their dress code is such, you want to make sure you're following that dress code. There is research actually done, like if you see someone who's dressed in something that may be like a little, scantily clad versus someone may just have a t-shirt and shorts on, which class would you go to? And I found it interesting that most students would prefer the person who's just casually dressed. Again, we are role models as group fitness instructors, so we want to make sure that we're getting that message out. So know your audience. And I talked briefly about music, and I would say also know your music. Make sure there's no profanity in your music. Or the way the music is, talking or degrading may not be profanity, but it could be degrading. And I've had that before. People's like, oh, I did not like that song. I found it very offensive. That gets cut. That's out of the list because you don't want to offend anyone. So you have to be very mindful of that when you're teaching your class. Welcoming everybody. As soon as they come in the door, before you even start, welcome everyone. Hello, my name is Joanne, and I'm here to teach this total body strength and conditioning class today. Let me explain what's going to happen. So throughout this class, we're going to do some cardio moves that's going to be interspersed with some strength resistance training moves. I will cue you on proper form and technique to ensure that everyone is getting the most out of their workout that they can. So again, I introduced what's going on, who I am, the type of class. This class will be approximately 40 minutes long, followed by, we're going to start with a warm-up. We're going to go right into the cardio section. After the cardio section, then we're going to do some strength and conditioning movements, and then we'll follow that with some, stretching, cool down. Anyone has any questions, please come out, see me afterwards. We can become very complacent as group fitness instructors. So I would say, if you're teaching in a gym, go to other people's classes that are teaching similar formats to what you're teaching. See what they have and what you're offering. How can you offer something a little different, like maybe a little niche in that fitness industry? Get some feedback, honest feedback from various group fitness instructors. Say, hey, I want you to take my class, and I want you to, kind of tell me where I can improve. Be honest. You talk a little too fast. I've gotten that one many times, but you want to make sure you get it all out, right? Cueing. That's the most important aspect of teaching a group fitness class. Regardless of what kind of class it is, you must be able to cue before the movement happens. There's nothing more frustrating for a student who is, still over here and you're over here because you decided, like, okay, this is where the music is. And you don't want to count it. You can use the class or the music to help you cue that next move, right? Everybody feel that music? In 5, 4, 3, 2, here comes that grapevine I showed you earlier. So you kind of make sure that you're having buy-in from them when you're doing the next move, okay? Nothing more frustrating than, I don't know if you've ever seen the show with Ray Romano, and he went with his wife to the step class, and he's up, she's all over, and he's like, I'm out of here. Well, that's how I felt during my first step class. I was like, not for me. Yeah, so step's not my thing. And you got to find what works best for you as a group fitness instructor. As I'm ending the class, I want to make sure that I'm thanking them for attending. And I look forward to seeing you next class. Something else that's really important is to stay up to date on the trends, but not get sucked into I have to do this because I saw this on TikTok, and this is something, it looks kind of cool. Well, if you haven't practiced it and it looks like it's something that could be challenging for your students, when in doubt, leave it out. Stay with your basics. Stay with the things that you know and can trust. You can work upon the basics like your march or step touches. You can make that more challenging by, increasing the intensity, adding arms, whatever. And you could also, again, regress that by making it simple. You want to make sure that every student feels successful, because if they feel successful, they're coming back. If they don't, they feel frustrated and like, oh, she was just up there doing her thing and I don't know what the heck was going on. Not inclusive whatsoever. So again, music's important, no profanity. Continuing your education. I have to say that too. If you want to grow, you have to sometimes go out of your comfort zone. What I like to say about what we do as group fitness instructors is that we're taking art and science and blending it together. And that's the magic of teaching group exercise class, is that while I'm up there, I have many roles. So I'm going through my roles as a group fitness instructor. Number one, I'm the teacher, right? I'm teaching something that I have practiced. because I know it like the back of my hand. You know, if I'm in the car, I'm like, okay, and this is where you change. Okay, okay. Practice as much as you can. Listen to that music so that you know. So not only are you the teacher, you're the educator. Why am I doing this move? Okay, what is the importance of this move? What muscles are being recruited? And am I doing it properly? Am I cueing it properly? People learn differently. I'm a big tell, show, do person. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to show you what we're going to do. And we're all going to do it together. Okay? And then I like to sometimes do a check-in just to make sure students are doing it right. Something else I would say, you never call someone out if they're doing something incorrectly. Right? And it could be that person in the back who's, you know, swinging their arm, doing that tricep kick back like this, and the arm's going like crazy, and you're like, oh, lordy, lordy, lordy. Okay. So what I would do is like, okay, let's all do a check-in. Okay? I'm going to rotate my body so you can see what's going on. Is that shoulder in line with that elbow, pointing up to the ceiling? Everyone have that? And we're going straight back. It's an elbow extension. And I'll give like little cues or cute things that kind of like stick in their head. Like, oh, it's a hip stop, not a pit stop. Everybody got that? Look around, do a check-in. So I feel that's less intimidating than, oh, let me go up to you and let me fix that. Because people sometimes, it's tough to approach people. So I rather use myself as the example. And okay, everybody, let's do a self-check-in. Where are our knees? Okay, are they in line with our shoelaces? When we squat, are we sitting back in a chair? We're making sure our hips bend first and not our knees. So simple, subtle little cues and tips can really make sure that people are doing the movement properly and executing that movement with proper body mechanics. And it's so, so important. But going back to my roles of a group fitness instructor, again, the teacher, you're teaching because you already know that. There's nothing worse than a teacher who has notes in front of them. Okay, I can read that, right? That's not teaching, right? That's just basically dictating to me what you've written down. So no, practice, practice, practice. Again, the educator, the person who's telling you why we're doing this moves, what muscles are being recruited. Also being a role model. You know, however you act in that class is how you should act outside that class. You are the role model. You are the consummate professional, or at least you want to make sure you always are. And going a little bit off tangent, I will say this, is that we never talk about someone, another instructor, and we never talk about students to other students. That's completely unprofessional, and that's a big no-no in this industry. And that probably won't open up too many doors as far as jobs if that's something that you do or engage in. I highly recommend that you don't. Another responsibility or goal of a fitness instructor is you're the coach. They're looking at you. And what's the coach do? Coach encourages people, right? How are we doing out there? Yes. Feed. Use the energy of the group. I have a story. And this is one I usually share when I teach my group fitness instructor class. Before I started taking spinning, I wanted to teach spinning. So I was going to different instructor classes. And the one class, and I always talk about safetyness, effectiveness, fun. First class I went to, was it safe? Yes, it was safe. The instructor helped with the setup on the bike. Was it effective? Yes, I sweat. It was really great. Got the heart rate up. But the music was like this the entire time. I kept looking at the clock thinking, when is this class going to be over? Oh, it was like, oh, doldrum. No, I can't take this. This is horrible. This is brutal. Is this what a class should be like? Of course not. So I decided, same gym, different instructor. I'm going to take this class. This is a male instructor. He did the whole thing, the setup. There was only 2 of us in class, myself and another student. He was the instructor, in front of the class. We did the setup. Dan starts the music, and I was like, oh, great, 80s music. I love 80s music. I'm, big fan. So he goes, okay, we're going to turn off the resistance on that flywheel. Are you ready, everybody? So, yes! It was just that energy, his enthusiasm. It was like, that's what a group fitness instructor needs. not yelling, it was just this emotion of, he was so excited that he was there and that we were there and he was teaching this class. And I think that's the key, is that passion. One of the most important aspects of teaching a class is that you have to have that passion. If you don't have that passion, you're in the wrong field. You're doing it because you are there for the client, the student, the goals, trying to help them achieve those goals. And that passion has to be there, regardless of the group that you're working for, whether it's older adults, whether it's just, some special population class, whether it's Tai Chi, whatever it is. You're there because that's your interest, that's your area of expertise, and you want to ensure that people are successful. So moving on from that, as far as how do I teach my class? And something I think is important is that many instructors get stuck or complacent after years of teaching. Like, I've got this, I'm so good, look at this, I've been doing this for 5-10 years. And I think it's so important to humble yourself and go to other instructors' classes and see what they're doing. And understand what your roles and responsibilities are. Sometimes we got to do a self-check-in, right? It's not about me. I may be the one on stage and people are listening to what I have to say. However, it's not about unobtainable goals. It's not about do as I do. It's not about 20 more crunches to flat abs. That's what I call the teacher-centered instructor. It's all about me. Look how great I look. No. If you want to be successful, you should be a student-centered instructor. And what I mean by that, it's you're focusing on them and their workout. And I'm up there, I'm going to say, go at your own level of fitness. Move at your own pace. Make modifications if you need to. Let me show you what those modifications are. Success doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. Fitness is a journey. You don't go from 0 to 100 overnight. You progress in time. And I think that's extremely important to continue to teach in that way. We don't want to become complacent. And with that, one thing is I've learned is I like to always learn. I like to learn what's out there. So when I teach a certification, I always say to students, your education doesn't end here. Continuing your education on and on and on. Let's face it, what we've done 20, 30 years ago in group fitness classes, we don't do today. Some things have changed. I mean, when I first started out, I was teaching my class, we were in bare feet. And I was like, what? Why would you do that? So things change as the fitness industry progresses. Something simple like you don't do static stretching before a workout. We do dynamic warm-ups. So a lot of our education comes from staying on top of what's going on in the industry, and that's by educating ourselves, making sure that we have the proper certification, AAAI. Also, look at going to various fitness organizations and seminars and learning more about your craft, and that will make you a better instructor. Some other characteristics. Let's talk about what makes a great instructor versus that mediocre or middle of the road or maybe bad instructor. Consistency. If you're not consistent, why would somebody want to come back? And I've had people tell me, oh, I went to so-and-so's class and it was amazing, but it's not always amazing. Well, then that person's not always putting the effort in to make sure that that class runs as smoothly as it should. They're not maybe doing the practice of knowing their information, knowing their movements, and inside out. Again, you have to arrive early. You could be the wonderful instructor who is just running into class 5 minutes before it starts or 2 minutes before it starts, and you're putting the music on and ha, here I am. Well, you kind of missed out on talking to the class and letting everybody know who you are, giving some tidbits before you start class. Hey folks, we're going to do a move today. I want to preview it before we do it so that you're not confused. So I'll break it down for you, and then you're going to see it again later on. Regardless of your day, be positive, be upbeat. You could have an argument with your significant other, whatever. Put that aside, okay? That'll be there. And you don't want to share that with the group. That's your personal information. And again, they're not there to hear, to be your counselor, if you will. Ask for feedback from other instructors or this class themselves. How did you enjoy the class? Be approachable. Acknowledge small things in the class, like, oh, today it's Julie's birthday. Let's all say happy birthday to Julie. Some people are like, oh, don't do that, don't do that. Or some people may like that. Or sometimes it's like a little acknowledgement of like, hey, is that a new shirt? That looks beautiful on you. The great color. Simple little things. People love to hear their name. People like to be acknowledged and to be praised, but you never call someone out in the class who may be doing something wrong. Approach them if you're doing something on the side and trying to correct that technique doesn't work, then maybe approach them afterwards and say, look, I just noticed something. I'm concerned because I don't want you to get hurt. Okay, and that's a fine line with that one. Always strive to be better. Be a better version of yourself, but be an original version. I don't know exact way that saying goes. I believe it's like, be a first-rate version of yourself instead of a second-rate version of someone else. So in other words, be authentic. Be you. Don't just try to mimic someone else who may have been like, your coach. Oh, I'm taking over so-and-so's class and I want to be just like that person. No, because you're never going to be just like that person. And again, that's not authentic. So be your authentic, genuine self. Another characteristic I will say that makes a great instructor is that realize you're always on stage. So you want to make sure, again, that's where the professionalism comes. Always expand as much knowledge as you possibly can by learning as much. But discern from someone's blog or something you saw on YouTube. Make sure you're going to credible sources, such as, our own website, AAAI, ACE, American Council on Fitness, American College of Sports Medicine, National Strength and Conditioning Association, going to credible sources, people that have been in the industry for many, many years. And I think that is what makes us the best instructor we possibly can. And be humble. Be humble. There are going to be days like when you're on top of the world and you feel like, man, that was a wonderful class, and like, how am I going to replicate that? And you may have a bad day, and that will happen. You're going to make mistakes, and as long as it's not something glaring, you just move on. I've made many mistakes. Like, okay, folks, we're going to continue marching because Joanne forgot what she was going to do right now, and then you go, oh, there it is. Okay, let's continue moving because we got it. Okay, and we're all going to have that, and just be able to laugh at yourself and continue moving. And that's the whole idea. It's just be human. We're not robots. We're not going to be perfect. We make mistakes, but as long as we acknowledge those mistakes and let them know that, oh, okay, she's not perfect, and it's okay for me to make a mistake as well. So I think that as far as my journey in group exercise for all these years, that's what I've learned is, the preparation, the cueing, making sure you master that. That is so important. And whether you're using your music as part of your choreography or in the background, still cueing, showing those modifications over and over and over again. Using limited amount of words when you are cueing. It's not like, okay, and being concise, not turn that way. Well, what's that way? Turn right. And of course, when we're teaching a group exercise class, and I always say this, and I taught for years with no mirrors in the room. Now, my left is my right, and my right is my left. So never ask someone who teaches group exercise that does not face a mirror for directions. I will completely screw you up, I promise you that, because I will tell you to go right, because it's my real right. So I think that's important too, is like practicing that over and saying that again and again, to the right. I'm like, but you're going left. But when you're facing them, that's their right. So if you're saying right and you're going left, they're completely confused. And that in itself is a huge art to master. Self-conscious in front of people. That's a good one. Well, number one, I think that if you wanted to do this, then there has to be some type of conscious, like confidence there, right? So that first class, you're going to be very, very nervous. And I would say practice in front of a mirror. Look at your own body and how your body moves and make sure you master that technique. Confidence will come with success. Little buildable success by people saying that was a great class or giving you positive feedback. Because again, when you're teaching a group exercise class, you're out there and for the world to see, and we're not perfect people. And again, that confidence comes with time and with practice. I remember teaching my first class and there was maybe 5 people in the class. You're like, oh gosh. But it's like, okay. And I think consistency is the key. By being consistent in what I'm teaching and delivering that message over and over again. The more you do it, the better you become. You want to get good at something, you practice, practice, practice. Usually, fitness instructors get paid per class, usually like per hour. Most fitness classes are about an hour, 50 minutes, whatever have you. And there's like a flat rate. I personally have many times negotiated my price depending on my travel time, depending on my experience. And I would say to the instructor, look, I'm not just, someone who's just recently certified, and I really feel like my value as a group fitness instructor, because I've been teaching, let's say, 10 years, and I also have a background in health and exercise science, versus someone who's just right out of the door here, who's making the same amount of money. Most gyms will pay about $25 for the class. Some will pay more, depending on the credentialing and or experience. So I say, hey, negotiate that. Know that up front, that this is what you're going to get paid. Is it for an hour class? Like with personal fitness training, they're usually half-hour sessions, and the gym gets half of whatever that session is. So that's something you can negotiate. In the beginning, you're just so hungry to teach that you're like, oh, sure, I'll take anything. But you also have to factor in, your travel time, the amount of time that you're putting into your routines or your exercises and changing them to keep them fresh, because you want people to keep coming back. You don't want people saying, oh, we're doing the same thing we did last week or the week before. So yeah, I think that's where you have some room to negotiate. But in the very beginning, I understand how instructors may feel stuck, like, okay, I only make this much an hour, so there can be some wiggle room. I would say first get the experience, work for that gym, get that experience under your belt, and then when you start to feel more confident in your ability, saying, hey, I think I deserve more, maybe it's time to have the talk with whoever that manager is and say, here's what I'm thinking. And there's no problem with negotiating. Again, I've negotiated many times saying, I really feel that my pay scale needs to be adjusted because of this, and this. When I taught my group exercise, I was a jazzercise instructor, and we were to collect our own fees and then pay, our continuing franchise fee. And I remember I would rent a facility. And the way I negotiate this was, the person who wanted the fee came down and said, wow, you had 50 people in your class last night, and I think we should, charge you more. They want to charge me more rent for the people. And I said, well, but what about in August when people are on vacation and maybe there's like 5 to 7 people in the class? Are you going to allow for me to pay less rent? So I negotiated that. However, let's say you're teaching in some type of, fitness facility, or maybe it's not even a fitness facility, it's like a rec room, and they say, we're going to pay you X amount of dollars per people. And then you say, okay, well, if I grow this class through my own marketing, will I be able to make more money? Let's say, okay, if it's 20 people or 15 people, will I get, $5 more? So you can barter. You can definitely negotiate that price with whoever that facility director is. Sometimes, like if you're in like a YMCA, you're kind of stuck with the pay scale, whatever the pay scale is. But there, again, I would highly recommend tooting your own horn, especially once you have that expertise under your belt, and just saying, look, I teach X amount of classes here, and if they don't want to lose you, they know you're a valuable asset, and you have a following. They're like, well, then we don't want her going down the street and then taking all those people with her. So, but of course, again, professionalism, you won't want to do that. So I do think that you can negotiate, though. I really do. For anyone in the fitness industry, social media can be your friend. Get your word out there. The more you see it, the more followers you have, and it can make you more popular. Why not just do like little fit tips, And then this way people go, oh, okay, she teaches that. And you could say, I teach at such and such, and then people are following you. And then you're in the gym, whether, again, whether it's regular group exercise class, whether it's yoga class, Pilates, or hey, I'm going to be teaching this class at XYZ gym. Come and check me out. So you're advertising for that gym, and you're advertising for more clients, and you already have this following. So I would highly recommend using social media to your advantage for group fitness instructors and personal trainers. We see that a lot when instructors, or they feel as if they have to teach so many classes, 10 classes a week. I saw it myself. You get that same sense of like burnout or overtraining, and you'll start to notice the fatigue, and your resting heart rate's much higher. You can't sleep at night. You have the insomnia because you're constantly going. You're thinking, oh, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that. We need to be able to do a self check-in and say, I think I need a break. And when I had my own franchise, I had substitutes. I would say, I need a week off. I just need to get away from this. I need my time. Or if I sustained an injury or a surgery or whatever have you. Common injuries are going to be from overuse. Whether it's going to be something like, overuse injury, rotator cuff strain, some type of patellofemoral disorder, or from the knee, doing too much of jumping, plyometrics. Got to be careful with that, especially as we get older. Body doesn't move quite the same. Ankle sprains, very common from rolling the ankle, moving, not hearing the cue or moving too quickly. So those are very common injuries. I think we have to do a self check-in and say, I think I'm getting like a little burned out here, and I need a break. I understand, like some people go, I can't, I need the money. Well, if you're not teaching that class up to par, and then you may start losing people, so you may be losing money down the road. So do a self check-in and know when it's time to, I need that break. And then when you come back, it's like a shot in the arm. It's like when you go to a conference and you see all these different presenters and you take all these different classes, you're like, I'm going to implement that into my classroom. I'm going to try that to see how that works. It's just that shot in the arm that you need. Sometimes that rest is your reset. And I think that can prevent a lot of injuries if we're in tune with our own body. And with that being said, maybe you're teaching 8 different classes or 10 different classes a week. Maybe you're teaching different formats. So maybe my high intensity class on Monday, but Tuesday I'm teaching an older adult class or a chair aerobic class, something more gentle in my body. So I'm not doing the high intensity every class. So I think that's where it's really important for instructors to kind of like get yourself out there and try different teaching modalities so it can kind of preserve the life of your body as well. Well, I would think that'd be more for the students because most instructors are probably mic'd. At least I know I was. I know certain group fitness instructors or classes don't have a mic and that music is blaring. I'm thinking, I think probably the hearing issue will, depends on the decibels. But for most instructors, we're kind of behind the music, whereas the music is blasting out that way. So that's kind of a good thing for the instructors. But the bad thing is when you're not teaching with the mic, and if you're not learning how to speak or cue from your diaphragm, and you're shouting, and you're not, hello class, how are we doing? Like using that diaphragm. I know more instructors who have had problems with their vocal cords, strain on their vocal cords, than they have had hearing problems. I think that's more of a common issue, but I'm not saying, of course, that doesn't happen as far as people having hearing issues due to the loud music. And again, I think that's important to check in. I would always make sure to say, as the music's as you're starting to build as far as your set, and you start to, climb up that bell-shaped curve in that cardio segment, you want that music there, but you don't want it so high intense that they can't hear you. They feel like, oh my gosh, I can't even hear. So check in and say, how's that music volume? I would ask that all the time because behind the music. The speakers are out in front of me. I'm behind it. How's that music volume? Someone will go, turn it up. Other people like, ooh. So I think, again, that's the part that as a group fitness instructor is like knowing your audience, feeling the audience, see what's going on. So listening to that feedback is really important. There are many research articles. I know ACE definitely had one as far as like decibels that is, within range as far as like group fitness instructors, what the sound should be. And yes, ACE definitely has done some research. I'm not so sure about ACSM, but I know ACE has. That's where that open dialogue is. If there's anyone here who has any issues with medical condition, please come and see me or let me know. And I think that's so important why an instructor should be in a class early. Is that, identify that person's new, I've never seen. Hi, I'm Joanne, an instructor. How are you? Nice to meet you. And have that dialogue. I've never seen you in class before. What brings you here today? Start that. Oh, okay. Well, I just signed up for the gym. And of course, if you're teaching in a facility, a gym, they collect all that data. Of course, they do the medical history. They do, if they are still doing the PAR-Q. So they would know that information as far as clearance for exercise. But that doesn't mean anything, right? You could have someone there who's, a diabetic or someone who has asthma, and it's important for them to carry that. I actually had an instructor who worked for me who had exercise-induced asthma. So she would have to carry an inhaler with her. But it's hard, and that's where it's a delicate playing field when you're teaching. But you have that person who's always amping it up, and you're like, okay, but I need to show modifications. And realize that students will mimic no matter what you do. And so that's where it's really important for the instructor not to go, high intensity all the time. You have to bring that down because you don't know. People are going to say, well, I got to keep up. Because it's human nature to want to keep up. Oh, I got to do this. No. Modifications. I mean, to this day, if someone's doing burpees or something like that, I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm going to modify that. There's no way. If I'm not going to show a modification, then I'm going to do a modification of it. Because I just know that my body that's not a good movement for it. But no, you're absolutely right, Joe. There's, you're going to have a lot of different physical abilities and, people are going to get stuck or they're going to have various injuries. And hopefully the people are honest with you. And they'll let you know that I can't do this. And I'll give you an example. As a breast cancer survivor, I was taking a class and the instructor was like, we're doing push-ups. And I was like, not me. And he came over, he goes, why aren't you doing this? I went, I'm a breast cancer survivor. I can't do this. I know what modifications I need to do. So I had to tell him what my modification was because he didn't know. And of course, how would he? I was in a gym situation and, I was wondering, why are you not doing push-ups? Well, I just had surgery a couple months ago, so that's not going to work for me. And I just quietly told him, he goes, no problem. Let me know if you need any help with anything. And that's the way you kind of handle it. You don't want to blurt out your personal information to everyone because that's your medical, information. You don't necessarily want to share that. And I think that's why it's important for the instructor to be there before and after class to know what's going on, to know if there are some limitations, and teach to those limitations to make sure that person still feels successful in that class. A lot of times gyms will have like a short description. Sometimes they don't. So I would, highly recommend, sometimes like what I personally would recommend is just like, instead of taking that class for the first time, maybe just like kind of observe what's going on. Is this a class for me? The gym that I used to teach, we used to basically say, okay, this is a beginner's class, or this class is more advanced because of this and this and this. But when I taught jazzercise, there's no like beginner, intermediate, advanced class. So I would say, okay, there's a lot of dance moves in here, and I'm just going to break it down for you as easy as possible. Some steps, certain exercises may be a little bit more challenging, and I'll be more than happy to help you break that down, afterwards. But with that, because it was more dancing, people felt like, well, I'm not really working out because I'm dancing. It's dance aerobics. But it can be very challenging if you go in that class. Again, you don't want to be the person who's like Ray Romano, like all over the place or banging into people. And that can be very frustrating because people say, I don't have the rhythm, so I'm not going to take a group dance class. So I need to find something that works best for me. And sometimes that's just trial and error. Just like with personal fitness training, how do I know how much load I need or whatever? I need to do trial and error. This is too light, this is too advanced. So finding what works best for you and your own interests. Just like as a group fitness instructor, I'm going to teach a class that I feel most comfortable with. Like, I'm not going to teach, a yoga Pilates class. Could I? Yes. But would I feel confident in doing it? No. Right? So I'm going to I'm going to stay in my lane, Joe. I'm going to teach what works best for me. And I think as far as a student going into that first class, you want to make sure, is this something that interests you? Or is it something you just say, I want to try this, whether it's like aerial yoga or something like that. I was like, well, yeah, this isn't for me. Okay. But you got to try it. And I think if the instructor, is a good instructor, they're going to welcome you in and explain, what you should expect from this class, and not get focused in on those veteran people in the front. And I think that's a huge issue that a lot of group fitness instructors have, is just listening to that front row. You've got a lot of other people out there that you really need to make sure that you are, taking the time, investing that time, that you want them to come back, right? You want them all to come back. So it's a very fine line when you teach in group fitness class, because you have all these different capabilities and some limitations. Some people are more advanced. So that truly is the magic of teaching group exercise class, making it simple enough that most people can follow, but yet still challenging for people who've been going for a long time. I would say, as far as words of wisdom, continue doing what you're doing. Always try to be the best that you can possibly be. Be the best version of yourself, and just follow your passion. Again, you can't fake that passion. You have to want to be there. You're doing something that you enjoy, and share that passion with your students. And that's what's genuine about teaching group exercise class. And that's what's going to want them come back, is that energy. They're going to feed off your energy. You're going to feed off their energy. And I would just say to any instructor, is just, if this is what you want to do, put the time in, put the effort in, just like you would anything else, a college course or whatever. Put that effort in and just be the best that you can possibly be.